This is Ted Bundy. Look at him. Really look at him. He is charming. He is articulate. He is a law student with a bright future and a smile that could light up a room. He looks like a man you would trust with your life. And that is exactly what makes him the most terrifying monster in American history. Beneath that polished exterior lay a darkness so absolute, it defies human understanding. Ted Bundy was not just a killer, he was a chameleon. He was a predator who turned the entire United States into his personal hunting ground. From the rainy streets of Seattle to the snowy peaks of Colorado, and finally to the sorority houses of Florida, he moved like a phantom. He crossed state lines. He changed faces. He slipped through the fingers of the law time and time again. He didn't just kill women. He collected them. He viewed human beings as possessions, as puzzles to be taken apart. For years, he walked among us. He sat in our classrooms. He worked in our offices. He campaigned for our politicians. He proved that the devil doesn't have a red face and horns. Sometimes the devil wears a suit. Sometimes he drives a Volkswagen. Over the next hour, we will peel back the mask of sanity. We will track the footsteps of a man who killed for sport and lied for pleasure. We will witness the escapes that baffled the police, the trial that captivated a nation, and the frenzy that eventually brought him down. Lock your doors. Check the windows, because you are about to meet the killer who looked just like us. (1974) Seattle, Washington. The Pacific Northwest is a place of rain, mist, and deep, dense forests. It is a landscape that keeps secrets well. In the early months of 1974, a strange silence began to fall over the University of Washington. It began with Linda and Healy. Linda was 21, a radio weathercaster, talented, beautiful, with a life full of promise. She lived in a house with several roommates. On the morning of February 1st, her alarm clock went off. It rang and it rang. Her roommates went to check on her. The bed was made. This was strange. Linda was neat, but the bed was made too perfectly. The pillow was placed just so. But when they pulled back the covers, they found blood. Linda was gone. There was no scream, no broken door. It was as if she had evaporated. In the months that followed, the evaporation continued. Donna Gale Manson, Susan Rancourt, Roberta Parks, Brenda Ball, Georgian Hawkins. One by one, they vanished. These were not high-risk victims. They weren't hitchhiking late at night on lonely highways. They were students walking to the library. They were women walking to a jazz concert. They were walking just a few hundred yards between a dorm and a fraternity house. The police were baffled. There were no bodies, no weapons, no witnesses, just a growing list of missing girls and a terrified community. But then the fog began to lift. July 14th, 1974. Lake Sammamish State Park. It was a beautiful summer day. Thousands of people were at the beach, drinking beer, swimming, soaking up the rare Seattle sun. In the middle of this crowd, a man was working. He was handsome. He wore a white tennis outfit. His left arm was in a sling. He approached a young woman. He smiled a sheepish, apologetic smile. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm having a bit of trouble getting my sailboat onto my car. Could you give me a hand?" Think about that request. It is designed to weaponize your kindness. If a man grabs a woman, she screams. But if a handsome, injured man asks for help, the social contract dictates that you help him. You don't want to be rude. You want to be a good person. Ted Bundy knew this. He relied on it. Witnesses saw this man approach several women that day. He told them his name was Ted. Most of them declined, but two did not. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund. They walked with him to his car, a tan Volkswagen Beetle. They were never seen alive again. For the first time, the police had a description. A handsome man, cast on his arm, a Volkswagen, and the name Ted. They released a sketch. When the sketch was published in the newspapers, it sent a shockwave through Seattle. Co-workers looked at it. Friends looked at it. A woman named Elizabeth Klopfer, who was dating a man named Ted Bundy, looked at it. She saw the resemblance. She knew he drove a Volkswagen. She knew he had a stash of plaster of Paris in his drawer. Plaster that could be used to make a fake cast. She called the police. But here is the tragedy. The police were overwhelmed. They had thousands of tips coming in. They looked at Ted Bundy, a law student, a clean-cut Republican, a suicide hotline volunteer, and they dismissed him. They couldn't reconcile the monster they were hunting with the man on the paper. And so, because he looked normal, Ted Bundy was left free to kill again. To understand the terror of Ted Bundy, we have to look inside his car. The Volkswagen Beetle. The counterculture of the 70s, the Beetle was a symbol of peace. It was the love bug. To Bundy, it was a mobile kill room. He modified the car specifically for his needs. He removed the passenger seat. Why? So that he could lay a body flat on the floorboards, completely invisible from the outside. Inside the trunk, he carried a kit that would make your blood run cold. A crowbar, an ice pick, handcuffs, rope, masks, and pantyhose. But his most dangerous weapon was not made of steel. It was his psychology. Bundy was a necrophile. This is a difficult word to speak, and a harder one to understand. He was not driven by passion or rage in the moment. He was driven by possession. He wanted total control. When he looked at a woman, he didn't see a person with dreams and fears. He saw an object. He called it the entity, a hunger inside him that demanded to be fed. He later described his condition in chilling terms. He said the urge to kill was like a tide. It would recede for a while, allowing him to act normal, to go to school, to date. But then the tide would come back in. The pressure would build, and he would have to go hunting. November 1974, Salt Lake City, Utah. Bundy had moved. He was now attending law school at the University of Utah. He left the ghosts of Seattle behind, but he brought the hunger with him. On a rainy November night, he went to a shopping mall. He spotted 18-year-old Carol Duranche. He didn't use the arm cast this time. He tried a new role. Police officer. He approached her. He told her someone had tried to break into her car. He told her he was a detective and that she needed to come with him to the station to file a report. Carol was suspicious, but again, he looked authoritative. He looked safe. She got into his Volkswagen as he drove. The nice policeman act began to crumble. He was driving the wrong way. He was quiet. Suddenly, he pulled over. He lunged. He snapped a pair of handcuffs onto one of her wrists. But he made a mistake. He didn't get the second cuff on. Carol Duranche fought for her life. She screamed. She clawed. She found a strength she didn't know she had. She managed to open the door and tumble out of the car onto the wet pavement. She ran into the path of an oncoming car. Carol Duranche survived. She was the one who got away. And because of her, the police now had something they never had before. A living witness who had looked the devil in the eye. But even then, the net did not close. Bundy was slippery. He went back to the shadows, and he changed his hunting grounds again. Bundy was now a predator in full flight. He knew the police in Utah were looking for him. So he began to commute. He would drive hundreds of miles from Utah to Colorado. He was crossing state lines, knowing that in 1975, police departments did not share information efficiently. There were no computerized databases. A murder in Colorado was just a local news story in Utah. He exploited the gaps in the system. January 1975. Karen Campbell. She was 23 years old. A nurse. She was on vacation in Aspen, Colorado with her fiancé. Aspen is a playground for the wealthy. It is bright, snowy, and safe. Karen walked from the hotel lobby to her room to get a magazine. It was a short walk, a brightly lit hallway. She never made it back to the lobby. Bundy was there. He struck in the silence of the corridor. He dragged her out into the freezing night. Her body was found a month later, miles away on a dirt road. The brutality of these killings was escalating. Bundy was becoming reckless. He was exhausted. He was drinking heavily. The mask of the handsome law student was slipping. He was starting to make mistakes. August 1975. A Utah highway patrolman named Bob Hayward noticed a Volkswagen Beetle driving suspiciously in a suburban neighborhood at 2:00 a.m. He turned on his lights. The Beetle took off. A high-speed chase ensued. When the car finally stopped, The trooper approached. He looked inside. He saw a handsome young man. But then he looked at the passenger seat. It was missing. He looked in the back. He saw a crowbar. He saw a ski mask. He saw handcuffs. The trooper didn't know he had caught a serial killer. He thought he had caught a burglar. He arrested Ted Bundy. And for the first time, the monster was in a cage. What happens next is perhaps the most frustrating chapter in criminal history. Bundy was in custody. The police began to connect the dots. They found the handcuffs. They found the credit card receipts placing him in Colorado near the murders. They had the identification from Carol Duranch. He was charged with kidnapping. He was sentenced to prison in Utah. Then he was extradited to Aspen, Colorado to stand trial for the murder of Karen Campbell. But Ted Bundy was not like other prisoners. He was arrogant. He fired his lawyers. He decided to represent himself. This gave him special privileges. He was allowed to go to the courthouse law library. He was allowed to walk around without handcuffs so he could handle documents. The guards treated him like a colleague, not a killer. They were charmed by him. Oh, that's just Ted, they thought. He's a lawyer. He's smart. June 7, 1977. Aspen Courthouse. Bundy was in the library on the second floor. The guard went outside to have a smoke. Bundy walked to the window. He looked down. It was a 25-foot drop. He didn't hesitate. He opened the window and jumped. He hit the ground, injured his ankle, but kept running. He was free for 6 days. The killer roamed the mountains of Aspen. He broke into cabins. He stole food. The police launched a massive manhunt. Dogs, helicopters, roadblocks. Eventually, driven by hunger and cold, he was caught driving a stolen car. He was dragged back to jail. You would think after this the security would be impenetrable. You would think they would never take their eyes off him. But Bundy was patient. He began to starve himself. Not for a hunger strike, but to get smaller. Glenwood Springs Jail. December 30th, 1977, the holiday season. The guards were relaxed. Bundy had lost 30 pounds. In the ceiling of his cell, there was a light fixture. He had carved around it. That night, while the other prisoners slept, Bundy squeezed his emaciated body through the tiny hole in the ceiling. He crawled through the ductwork. He could hear the guards talking below him. He crawled until he reached the apartment of the jailer, which was attached to the prison. He dropped down into the closet. He changed into the jailer's street clothes. He walked out the front door. By the time the guards realized he was gone the next morning, Ted Bundy was already in Chicago. He was gone. And this time, he was heading for a place where no one knew his face. He was heading to Florida. January 1978. Tallahassee, Florida. Bundy arrived in the Sunshine State under a fake name. Chris Hagen. He rented a room near Florida State University. He was falling apart. The charming Ted of Seattle was gone. He was now a feral animal. He was drinking constantly. He was stealing food. He was angry. He knew his time was running out. He knew he couldn't keep the mask on anymore. So he decided to go out in a blaze of violence. The night of January 14th, 1978. The Chi Omega sorority house, IT, was 3 a.m. The house was silent. Most of the women were asleep after a night of partying. Bundy entered through a back door with a broken lock. He grabbed a piece of oak firewood from a pile outside. What happened next was not a seduction. It was not a ruse. It was a massacre. He went from room to room. He attacked Margaret Bowman. He attacked Lisa Levy. He bludgeoned them in their sleep. He didn't speak. He didn't try to hide. He was unleashing pure rage. He attacked 2 more women, Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, breaking their jaws, shattering their teeth. Then, just as quickly as he arrived, he fled into the night. The scene inside Chi Omega was unlike anything the police had ever seen. There was blood on the ceilings. But Bundy wasn't done. A few blocks away, he broke into another apartment and attacked a student named Cheryl Thomas. In less than an hour, he had attacked 5 women. 2 were dead. 3 were maimed for life. He left behind a crucial piece of evidence. A bite mark on the body of Lisa Levy. He had left a savage, distinct bite. That mark would be his undoing. But the horror had one final chapter. February 9th, 1978. Lake City, Florida. Kimberly Leach. She was 12 years old. She was not a college student. She was a child. Bundy was deteriorating. He was driving a white van. He saw Kimberly at her junior high school that he convinced her to come to his van. This was his final kill. It was sloppy. It was desperate. It was the act of a man who had lost all control. When they found Kimberly's body weeks later in a hog shed, the nation wept. The handsome law student myth was dead. There was only the monster. It ended, fittingly, with a stolen car. Bundy was driving a stolen Volkswagen in Pensacola, Florida. A police officer ran the plates. He turned on his lights. Bundy ran. He fought. When the officer tackled him, Bundy screamed, "I'll kill you!" But he didn't. He was cuffed. When they took him in, he wouldn't give his name. He spent days in the cell, refusing to speak. Finally, he asked to make a phone call. He called his girlfriend, Elizabeth. He told her, "I'm in Pensacola." He hung up. The police traced the call. They knew who he was. The FBI's 10 most wanted fugitive was in custody. The trial that followed was a circus. It was the first nationally televised trial in American history. Bundy loved the cameras. He wore suits. He smiled. He winked at the press. He acted as his own attorney again. He cross-examined the police officers who arrested him. He cross-examined the survivors. Imagine the cruelty of that. Imagine being a survivor of a brutal attack and having the man who tried to kill you standing 3 feet away, asking you questions, pretending to be a lawyer. He thought he could charm the jury. He thought he could outsmart the judge. But he couldn't outsmart his own teeth. The prosecution brought in a forensic dentist. They took a mold of Bundy's teeth. They had the photos of the bite mark on Lisa Levy. It was a perfect match. The crooked lower incisor. The chip in the tooth. It was as unique as a fingerprint. When the jury saw the overlay, Bundy's teeth fitting perfectly into the wounds of the dead girl, the charm evaporated. The jury didn't see a handsome man. They saw a predator, guilty. The judge, Edward Cowart, looked at Bundy. He said, "It is a tragedy for this court to see such a total waste of humanity. You're a bright young man. You'd have made a good lawyer, and I would have loved to have you practice in front of me. But you went another way, partner." He sentenced Ted Bundy to die by the electric chair. 3 times over. Death row is a slow place. For 10 years, Bundy sat in a cell in Rayford Prison. He filed appeals. He claimed he was innocent. He married a woman named Carol and Boone in the middle of his trial, exploiting an obscure Florida law, and even fathered a child while on death row. He was still manipulating, still trying to control the narrative. But as the date of his execution drew near, January 1989, the facade cracked. Bundy became desperate. He realized the charm wasn't going to work on the electric chair, so he began to trade. He offered confessions. He offered the locations of bodies. He sat down with FBI agents and detectives. He talked about the entity. He talked about the heads he had kept as trophies. He talked about returning to the dump sites to perform unspeakable acts with the corpses. He revealed the true depth of his depravity. He admitted to 30 murders. He hinted at many more. He was trying to buy time. "Give me another week," he'd say, "and I'll give you another body." It was a grotesque marketplace. He was using the bones of his victims as currency to buy a few more breaths of air. But the governor of Florida, Bob Martinez, had had enough. He refused to delay. The warrant was signed, January 24, 1989. The sun rose over the Florida fields. Outside the prison, a crowd had gathered. Thousands of people. It was a party atmosphere. There were people drinking beer. There were people holding signs. "Burn, Ted, burn. Tuesday is Friday." It was a release of 15 years of fear. The boogeyman was finally going to die. Inside the chamber, Bundy was strapped into the oak chair. His head was shaved. His leg was shaved. He looked old. The handsome face was puffy and gray. The eyes were terrified. He was asked for his last words. He looked at the witness glass. He saw his lawyer and a preacher. His voice trembled. "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." That was it. No apology to the victims. No remorse for the lives he stole. Just a final performance of the good boy. The executioner pulled the switch point. 2,000 volts of electricity surged through his body. At 7:16 a.m. Theodore Robert Bundy was pronounced dead. Outside, a cheer went up from the crowd. White smoke rose from the prison. The nightmare was over. Ted Bundy has been dead for decades. But he remains a scar on the American psyche that he changed the way we live. Before Bundy, people hitchhiked without fear. They left their doors unlocked. They trusted the stranger with the broken arm. After Bundy, we learned to look twice. We learned that evil is not always ugly. We learned that intelligence does not equal morality. There is a temptation to glorify him, to focus on the genius or the charm, but we must resist that. Bundy was not a genius. He was a failure who flunked out of law school. He was a thief who stole credit cards. He was a coward who attacked women from behind while they slept. That he was a man who was so hollow, so devoid of humanity, that he had to destroy others just to feel real. Do not remember the killer. Remember Linda. Remember Carol. Remember Karen. Remember Kimberly. Remember the women who had their lives stolen in the dark. And remember the lesson: the next time you see a charming smile, the next time a stranger asks for help, the next time you feel that tiny prickle of instinct on the back of your neck, listen to it, because the monsters don't hide in the shadows anymore. Sometimes they are standing right in front of you in the light. We must also recognize that true justice is not found in the flip of a switch or the stopping of a heart. Justice is found in the memory of those who were taken. It is found in the sisters, daughters, and friends who never got to grow old. Bundy tried to erase them, to reduce them to statistics in his twisted game. But he failed. We remember them, not as victims, but as vibrant lives cut short. So as the screen fades to black, do not let his face linger in your mind. Let it be replaced by the faces of the women he could not destroy. Let their memory be a shield. Let their stories be a warning. The boogeyman is dead, buried in an unmarked grave, but the vigil continues. Stay safe, stay aware, and never let the darkness win.